5 months ago, I left everything behind: my business, my friends, the life I'd built in Nigeria, and moved across the world to Canada with my wife and 3 kids. And 5 months later, do I regret it? Who knows? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Ugo Nkocha, and 5 months ago, I relocated from Nigeria to Canada with my wife and 3 kids, and I'm documenting in real time what it takes to rebuild life, business, and family from scratch in a new country. On this channel, you will see the real journey, the struggles, the wins, and the lessons from starting over as a husband, father, and entrepreneur abroad. You will also get practical insights on what it takes to raise kids in the digital age, especially as parents that have to raise kids in a future that is shaped by AI. So if you're a parent, an immigrant, an aspiring immigrant, or an entrepreneur curious on starting life anew abroad, you are in the right place. Subscribe and join me as we figure this out together. In this video, we are going to be talking about my background story, what things were back home, why we left, and then we're also going to be talking about, now that we're here, how are things here? How are we comparing things? And like I asked again, do I regret that move? So we're going to be looking at things like the cost of living, education, healthcare, security, and those are things that will help us to come to a conclusion whether we regret it or not, right? All right, so how were things back home before we left? We're okay. We're not rich. We're just comfortable. My wife and I run a business, a growing business, Niger Cookies Academy, that was growing. So we were able to take care of our basic needs and maybe afford a little extra here and there. So it's not as if we were looking for greener pastures in the sense of, okay, we wanted where we're going to make more money. So it wasn't about the money, okay? But what informed our decision to leave? One thing was I wanted options for my family. You get to that point where you want to be able to have options to do things. I was beginning to feel trapped in Nigeria, like this is all you have. You can't move out of this place if things go south. You want to be able to move. As a man, you want to be able to protect your family in case anything goes wrong. So holding a Nigerian passport only was something that I felt was going to be an issue for us, just in case, right? So I always love to have options, even if I don't use them. So just like, how people back home would say, oh, if things are tough, in the city, I'm going back to the village, because again, you have options. People want to have options. So I started getting this feeling of being trapped, and I didn't want that. Okay, for my kids, I wanted to have global access for myself and my family. So a second residence in another country was on the table for us. A second passport also was on the table for us, because that would help us to be able to access more places all over the world. So we started thinking about these things then. Of course, the whole economy issue in Nigeria, yes, we are doing well, but things started getting a little more difficult. Every month you were spending more and more. The cost of living was skyrocketing. Inflation was biting hard. The naira was losing its value. So it felt as if every 2 steps you make forward in business, in your finances, you were taking 4 or 5 steps backwards. So it was really, really frustrating, and it was something that I couldn't deal with. I also wanted our kids to have other experiences, right? Not just, in Nigeria. I had lived in Nigeria for over 30 years. Of course, I've also lived in the UK as well. So I wanted my kids to grow up knowing what other places in the world we're about, not just stuck in Nigeria. And you know that the more you stay in Nigeria, the harder it becomes to make such moves because things get more and more expensive. I also left because I wanted a bit of sanity. I wanted a society that was a bit more sane, a bit more fair, that had a bit more sense of justice. I'm not saying this place is perfect or that there are countries that are perfect, but I wanted more than what I was getting in Nigeria in terms of, fairness, in terms of justice, in terms of sanity, in terms of ease of life, just living in a decent place. I wanted to experience decent life. So I wanted a place where my kids would see the police and be assured of security rather than be afraid of being extorted or things like that. So all these things just began to pile up until we got to October of 2020, when Nigeria went through the EndSARS protest. And the things that happened after that, I just told my wife, like, no, we have to leave now. All right. So that was what broke the camel's back. And we started the whole process of applying for express entry to become permanent residents in Canada. So now we were here, we've spent 5 months plus. So what is our assessment so far? So we're going to look at it in terms of cost of living, education, healthcare, safety and security, and just the general ease of living in this place, right? So when it comes to cost of living, I won't lie to you, it is pretty expensive, right? So the cost of rent, the cost of food or groceries, bills, but again, one thing that you need to know is that even back home in Nigeria, it's not getting easier or cheaper to live. All right. So when you compare what you earn in Nigeria versus the cost of living, even rent is skyrocketing in Nigeria, right? But what do people earn in Nigeria, and how is it, how does it align with what the bills are? All right. The cost of fuel here is almost the same as the cost of fuel in Nigeria, right? So in Nigeria, we pay, at least as at when I left, I had paid almost 1,100, or even more than that for fuel at some point. I hear that now it's a bit lower, but here as well, fuel goes for like maybe $1.26, $1.16. It changes, right? So if you do a conversion, from naira to Canadian dollar, you can see that it's not really that far apart. Okay, so that's for fuel. Of course, for rent is quite expensive here, no doubt. Then when it comes to healthcare, so of course there is the most people in Canada have the general insurance by the province where they live. So we are staying in Ontario, so they have the Ontario Health Insurance Plan, OHIP, that helps to cover the cost of your visit to the doctor, blood work, scans, x-ray, things like that. Though you still need extra insurance, for things like your medication, if you're on prescription drugs, things like that. But if you have a job, a lot of good jobs, would include insurance for these things, right? So when it comes to education, the kids go to school for free, at least primary to secondary school education is free here for kids. So, and this is something that people in Nigeria or back home would have to have paid a lot to achieve the same thing if you want your kids to go to good schools. So education is free, at least up to secondary school. Then when it comes to safety and security, of course, there is no place that is 100% safe. But I must tell you that I sleep, easier and better. I'm not concerned about, kidnappers. I'm not concerned about going out late at night. Sometimes when I do some work at church, and we have to walk till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You can see people still walking on the streets at that time at night. we can drive back at 2 a.m. and you're not afraid. But back home, that wasn't the case, right? So I love it here in terms of healthcare. Yes, healthcare here can also have its own issues, because in some cases people have to wait in long queues for an emergency and things like that, but we haven't experienced that yet. So until then, I cannot make a judgment on that. Okay, so we're looking at food and groceries. They are quite expensive here, of course, but when you compare it with what you earn as well, I think it sort of balances itself out. Okay, so so far there are, I think, all what we faced as issues are issues that should be expected when you move from one country to one that you have never been to before. And do I regret it in terms of maybe costs and expenses and all that? Not one bit, because all what we are experiencing, I consider them as just teething problems. Like when a child is growing teeth, there's that pain and discomfort that you face. So I consider them so far as teething problems associated with moving into a new country. And would I move again? Yes, I would move, because there was a goal for moving, right? And there's a price to pay. Remember, I said at the beginning that we wanted options, right? So there's a price to pay for that kind of option, right? The other alternative will be to go back to where we came from, and that's not what we want. That's not that's not the life we want to live right now. So no regrets so far, no regrets. And again, we have a goal, we have a purpose. There's a reason we moved in the first place. Maybe when we achieve those goals, we would reevaluate our situation and know whether this is a place for us, whether we want to stay back or whether we want to move somewhere else or go back home. So it's a dynamic thing, it changes. So we're not just going to be fixed. So let's see how things evolve. And of course, remember that this is a journey and we're trying to figure things out, and I've invited you to join us on this journey as we figure things out, both as a husband, as a father, as a parent, as an entrepreneur, because I'm building my business here again. I'm building a brand new business here again. I still have my business running back in Nigeria. I still work with my team back in Nigeria, but we have to start something new here as well. So thank you all for paying attention to me. This is my first official YouTube video, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I invite you to subscribe to my channel. Click on the like button if you enjoyed this video, so that other people as well can see it. And click on the notification bell so that you get notified each time I bring out a new video. I intend to bring out a video at least once a week, if not more, going forward, as I share my experiences. So what kind of content would you like me to create that would be of interest to you? Let me know in the comments. What has been your experience so far? If you are a new immigrant or you've been here for a while, we don't know it all. This is my own experience I'm sharing, so there's no need to fight, there's no need to argue. Everybody has a different experience, so we just want to learn from each other. I am open to learning, so share your own experience in the comments as well, so that maybe as I'm a newbie, in Canada, I would get to learn from you as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.